You brought up one reason. It's a bunch of part-time people in this industry that have given the industry a bad name. The other
Yeah,
reason why we're in the boat that we're in is because we have been one of the poorest marketing industries on the planet, because
right.
we took to the football game and we walked through the stands, so to speak, and marketed ourselves in a place that wasn't designed for marketing. You went to the football game and you walked up and down the bleachers and introduced yourself and said, "Let me give you a Monday market update." And everybody was like, "Get the F out of here." And that's exactly what happened on social media. People showed up to social for social connection, for entertainment, for all of these reasons that weren't to be spammed to. And that's what we did. And you brought it up perfectly. Go to the game, ask the person how their kid's doing. Done. You planted a seed. Mr. Brian Stevens is back in the studio to talk about what in the hell is going on. Brian, I'm going to try to make this, as we talked about in the last one, a fairly regular thing, because you are sitting on you're kind of like the gatekeeper to everything that's happening in the mortgage world. And there's a lot of hot topics right now that I kind of think we should unpack. I'd love to get your
Okay.
take on them and go a little bit deeper than what you do on your show.
Sure.
So let me throw a few things at you. We've got the open door scandal that you talked about recently. There's also another one that I didn't mention to you off air, which is the BlackRock conversation,
Oh,
and kind of
God.
how that could potentially impact the future of just our industry, our world. And then, of course, there's the NAR lawsuit that's still coming down the pipe, and how we deal with that and what's going to happen in July and all that kind of stuff. So where should we start here?
I mean, I think the best place to start is kind of like, what do we do right now as a loan officer or a realtor? Like, what do we do like today? Like, what is my actionable plans that I have in place right now based on all the craziness that I've heard over the past couple of months? I think my answer is this: like, don't do anything. So I'm having a conversation internally, like with some of my partners right now, and what we're doing is we're giving the old 24-hour like pause on things. I think what we do is we kind of go business as usual, but we have to be really considerate about what that means. So in years past, like we just make assumptions about things. Realtors are going to make like this money. Like there's protocols and procedures that are in place. I think we have to really understand what that looks like a little bit more. So we have to, as loan officers, like be more thoughtful about it. And we have to sit down and say, okay, so right now there might be a negotiation in place with this real estate agents commission on this transaction. We have to go forward, understanding like where we're at. But what we have to do is we have to understand that, Fannie, Freddie, and Jenny have all like changed their rules right now. And maybe we proactively have a conversation with our realtors and saying, listen, if you find your commission getting knocked down a little bit through the course of like your process, maybe what we do is we have a better understanding that that's part of the negotiation going into it. And I think what realtors have to do, more so than loan officers have to do, is they have to realize that. Like they have to understand what their commission is when they're going into a transaction a little bit more than they have in the past.
Yeah. So as a support person, because I think that's where the rubber is really ultimately going to meet the road, especially over the next 6 months, assuming there's not some boom that kind of takes everybody's eye off the ball, right? And you just
Right.
start getting influx with business. I think the loan officer that figures out how to truly be of the highest value to their real estate partners is the loan officer that is going to see the most success. But what does
Well,
that mean?
Well, I mean, so right now there's indecision in real estate. Like you have to understand, like realtors don't know what they're doing. I think Keller Williams got hit with like 4 lawsuits last week alone. And this is going to continue happening. I've said this from day one. Lawyers sue. That's what they do for a living. And realtors sell real estate. So when you ask a realtor to deal with lawsuits, you're getting outside of like their sweet spot. So there's a ton of indecision, not only from like the broker standpoint, but also the real estate agent standpoint. And they are looking for answers. The more answers that we can go ahead and, volley these things and have conversations about, the better off we're going to be as loan officers. So we have to be, we have to understand where the market is, where the market is going. And we have to be the person who's going to answer those questions. We have to deal with indecision.
Yeah.
because indecision is facing us. Like, listen, we both know this. I mean, let's just be honest about it. Most of these realtors that we deal with right now, they have no clue what's going on. Half of them don't even know that there's a lawsuit that they're facing right now. The other half don't know what to do with it.
You really believe that? You really believe that half of the industry doesn't even know about this?
100%, yes. Not even a question. And that, by the way, in part is the reason we find ourselves in this like precarious predicament. If you think about it, it's like, yeah, because they don't know, because they're not attentive to like where they're at right now. Of course, that's the reason for the problem that we have in the first place, man. So what we have to do is we have to be the ones who have the answers. Here's the whole thing. We got 1.6 million realtors right now. Let's assume we lose 600,000. The numbers are off the board. If you didn't catch this, NAR just quit reporting for over 100 years, literally 100 years. How many realtors that they have as part of their association?
They quit
They stopped
reporting.
that after. What's that?
They quit reporting that.
Just last month.
Why?
Well, because their numbers are going down. I mean, they're going down like in a way that doesn't even make sense. Because people are getting out of the business right now,
Sure.
because they're disenfranchised, like with what NAR is doing right now. So they decided after 100 years that they're going to stop reporting that. Like, why? Yeah, it is. It's totally crazy. So what it is like we have to be those decision makers in a world of indecision. Like we can do that as loan officers. Like this whole thing is kind of a no-brainer to us. Like half the loan officers out there right now are saying, well, I'll just go get my real estate agent's license and I'll list a house because I've done FSBOs before in the past. And man, I'll tell you this right now, like most of my great transactions, like did not have realtors in them. It was just easy. You know, when you're dealing with buyers and sellers and the whole thing, put your contract together, like the whole thing becomes relatively simple. So as a solution for us to go out and get our real estate agent licenses, I mean, maybe that is the answer. But the truth of the matter is, if we want to be better at what we do, we have to empower our realtor partners. And if we lose 600,000 out of the 1.6 million that we have right now, I mean, our business would be better. Here's the problem, Jeff. You would have to deal with real estate agents and more competition from other lenders who are vying for a smaller piece of the pie.
Sure.
However, when you get these real estate agent partners and you start working with them, you're going to disproportionately like be advantaged. So right now, if your average realtor is doing like less than one half of a side of a transaction on an annual basis, now we're talking about somebody who's going to be dealing with two. And in fact, the conversation that we had right before we came online right now was with a realtor that I'm working with, and she's got an opportunity for 60 listings. Now, this is a gal who, I mean, she busts her ass. I mean, I'll tell you right now, like I appreciate her hustle. I mean, she understands hustle. What she does is she'll send people over to me that aren't necessarily like the best qualified, people that you could possibly find, but we deal with that type of breakage on a lending standpoint because she's constantly hustling. Like I would rather deal with 10 of her than, 15 or 20 agents who, are bored housewives.
Yeah.
Know what I mean? Like look at the fact that we are going to find ourselves in a target-rich environment where we're going to be able to get better referral partners, a better quality referral partner going forward, but we're going to have to work harder for it. What does that mean?
Yeah.
Jeff, you answer that.
Well, but let me unpack that for a second, because
Sure.
the 600,000 that are also probably going to leave are going to primarily be the agent who's doing the fraction of a transaction per year, which really wasn't on our radar in the first place.
Okay.
So it's like I'm not even, I mean, so that's good news for a real estate professional, because now you don't have to vie or compete with the agent who's stealing one deal a year from you because they were doing their cousin's or their neighbor's loan and or their transaction, right? Now, from a loan officer's perspective, what about those numbers? First of all, because less realtors, but it's the same pool. So I don't know if that really changes much. That goes back to what you said in the beginning. Does anything really change? Should anything really change? The numbers for NAR are going to change, but like, I think we're just going to be weathering the people that weren't doing anything anyway. But what about on the loan officer side? Because those numbers are also dropping.
Listen, you're right. I mean, the reality is, and I think it was 28 straight months that we've seen declines in terms of where our inventory is. That's absolutely affecting like what LOs can do right now. But it absolutely does not change what LOs should be doing with their behavior. Don't judge the outcome, judge the activity. If you're an LO right now, judge your activity. Like, what are you doing? Do you have best practices in mind? Are you doing the things that you need to be doing?
Yeah.
Are you having purpose-driven days? So my thing is like from 8 o'clock in the morning until like 3:30, 4 o'clock, depending on the day. It's like those hours are dedicated to work. No question about it. I don't want to talk to my family. I don't want to have like simple conversations. I treat every day like I'm going on vacation tomorrow. Like that's the idea. So I try to have purpose-driven days, and what I do is I judge my day. I don't judge like the outcome of it because sometimes we can't control that. So right now, when we see the business going down, like we will wane and wax, and and in terms of like what our activity is. But the truth is, when things are getting slower, it's when we really have to double down. I know it's easy to say, but it's really hard to do. So imagine like over the course of your day. So we've been talking about this, like doing this interview for a couple of days now. But like, imagine you didn't do this. And imagine maybe we chose to do this. And imagine there's one loan officer in Tucumcari, Texas, who hears something. And imagine that that person changes, what their activities are today. And imagine that they go out and have a conversation that they otherwise wouldn't have. And imagine that becomes like a great referral partner for the next 10 years. This is the discipline that we choose to do. Not only inside of our business, but even outside of it. So right now, I mean, as a loan officer, it's like, listen, I get it. Like things are 28 months in a row where we've seen like down markets. It's going to change. It will hit. By the way, we're in a recession right now. There's a great number from the Fed where they said when they've raised rates by 4% over a 6-month period, like 8 out of 9 times we had a recession. So are we in a recession? Yeah, we're probably like in the mix. We're in the crux of it as we speak. Does that change what we do? No, it means we double down on what we do. We have to understand like the world that we're living in as LOs. Listen, we're hustlers. Like this is what we do.
Yeah.
If we don't hustle, then we ain't working.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep. And that's doesn't matter if we're talking 2020 and 2021 or we're talking the last couple of years. To the riches, what are they, what's the saying about the riches and the spoils, right? That is what's going to happen now is the same thing that happens in the busy times. In other words, those that put the effort in are the ones that they're going to reap the reward. What you got to figure out is how is that evolving? Because this is where you and I know you like to ask my opinion on things, is because the way we've always done things is not the way we're always going to continue to do the things. And that is, to me, something that this industry as a whole really needs to come to grips with, because the times they are a-changing.
Well, I've always said, like, read the tea leaves of the market right now so we can adjust our sails to, navigate the turbulent waters in front of us. As an LO, like we have to do it. Like, why do I need to know what the Fed's doing? Why do I need to know what the Treasury's doing? Why do I need to know what Jenny's doing right now? Why do I need to know like all these great trends and all this great information that we have in front of us? Is because they tell us the story of what we need to do. Like that's how we react to things. I mean, I'll tell you something right now. Like one of the things that I'm looking at, Jeff, is I know that right now 28.3% of all properties that are purchased by investors. We know at the end of this year that number is going to go up to 30%. 30%, like 1 out of 3 almost properties that are going to be purchased. Well, I need to be fluent in the language of the loans that those people are writing. I know that it's going to be our non-QM loans. Like for me, that one is irrefutable evidence. And I got the logistics, I got the numbers in front of me. I know what I need to do. And in fact, if that's the biggest growing portion of our market right now, not only do I have to be fluent in the language of non-QM, but I have to be evangelical about it. I have to go talk to people and say, hey, listen, I know that you right now have an opportunity to increase your real estate holdings. You do. Jeff, right now, you bought your house 6 years ago for me. And I know that you're sitting on $180,000 in equity. I know if you took $100,000 in that equity right now and you put 25% down on a house out there in St. Louis, you could double your real estate holdings, and that's going to be a great investment for you. Would you like to have that type of conversation? Mm-hmm. And you might say pound sand, Brian, or you might say, you know what? I kind of want to have a conversation about it. And if you do, I better be able to respond to it. Like that's what I do. And oh, by the way, when I have this conversation with you, Jeff, like I'm not dealing with other lenders. I'm not dealing with other realtors. Me and you are dedicated to each other in that thing. You're not shopping my rate. You're not shopping my situation. We're having a conversation about how we double your real estate holdings. Like that's the conversation more lenders need to have right now. We're so, cavemen about this whole thing. where we just think club over the head when we see it and drag it back to the cave. What we have to do is we have to be much more understanding about the opportunities in front of us. We have to generate deals where they don't exist.
Hmm.
And there's a ton of them right now. And we have all the analytical evidence that would suggest, everyone who's sitting on their still record equity. It's not what it was a couple of months ago, but man, it's pretty damn close.
Hmm.
Like we have to have more proactive conversations about that. I don't need to wait for you to come over and like just like knock on my door or ring my bell. I'm going to knock on your door and ring your bell. Make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah. Yeah. And you brought up a good point. So that's one segment, which is investors, which, and I don't want to leave that sitting aside without mentioning the whole BlackRock conversation, because it's a part of it, but different, because BlackRock's not somebody that's the big corporation, a conspiracy that they want to own all of real estate. And these younger generations, I almost feel like they want them to feel convinced that the dream of home ownership is dead, and that is their sneaky way of owning all, gradually just consuming real estate, so that these 20 somethings and younger become renters for their entire lives.
So I think we have to get to a point where we just don't call it a conspiracy. Like understand who BlackRock is. BlackRock is the biggest investor in 505 of the 505 S&P 500. And for people who follow the stock market, the S&P is where you really want to be looking, not the Dow Jones. They own everything. They own absolutely everything. Yeah, and if you think about this for a couple of seconds, like why would they not want to be a part of what we do? So I just saw this graph the other day, and it was crazy about how much of the GDP the United States real estate market is. It's upwards of 35%. So 35% of our country's GDP is wrapped up in real estate. It's a multi-trillion dollar industry, trillions, not billions, trillions. Now, if you don't understand the difference between trillions and billions, a trillion seconds is 28 years. Excuse me, a billion seconds is 28 years. A trillion seconds is 28,000 years. It's the numbers are beyond our comprehension.
Yeah.
And to assume that the biggest, greatest investor in the world, and oh, by the way, do you know this? That the third largest economy in the world is BlackRock? Do you know that?
No, I didn't know
Yeah.
that.
So right now it goes the United States, we represent 25 to 30% of the world's GDP, and real estate is 35% of 25%. The numbers are just extraordinary. And then you have China, who's number two, and BlackRock is number three. BlackRock as an economy is bigger than England, France, Germany. Like, do the numbers on this. It's crazy. India, it's nuts. So yeah, so to assume that there's a $1 trillion industry that they're getting beaten by a bunch of bored housewives, that has to drive them nuts. And when we look at companies that are an extension of BlackRock, they're already primed and ready to fill the voids from all these lawsuits. This cannot be accidental. Yeah, it's a $1 trillion industry. It's the biggest thing out there. Why wouldn't you do it? If you're a trophy hunter, I mean, who are you going after?
Yeah.
I want
So,
the big game.
but then so then, okay, let's set that aside, that okay, this isn't a conspiracy, this is the plan.
It is.
Then I look at our job as this industry to be the only chance that the world has of saving that from happening. And the only way that we can save that from happening is educating, convincing that generation who's going to feel like they don't have a chance, that they do have a chance, and now helping them make that come to fruition.
Okay, so the biggest investor in Open Door is BlackRock. The biggest investor in Zillow is BlackRock. The biggest opponents to local real estate agents is BlackRock. Okay, that's a fact. So it sounds so grandiose when you put it that way. Oh my God, I'm not like one of these Avengers. I mean, that's not who I am. But in fact, maybe we are that. Here's what happened. A couple of years ago, all of these businesses basically went broke. And can you imagine how much that pissed them off? Like that a bunch of stupid realtors and lenders like actually beat them at what they did. But here's what they don't have, dude. Like they don't have you out in, where are you at in Missouri?
St. Louis, Missouri, and Lake of the Ozarks, Missouri. I'm in two places.
Okay, so a little bit of podunk there, right?
Big time
Now,
on Lake of the Ozarks.
now,
Yeah.
now, Now, here's the whole thing. And I saw this up close. And I have a friend of mine, his name is Joe Rapisarda. I've known him forever. He's a lender. He's great at what he does. He is Vacaville royalty. He is the big fish in the small pond, as are all the Rapisardas in this town, as are like we know the families. We're small enough to where we know these things. And I was talking with him and his brother Ed. And so Ed and Joe were talking, and I was trying to sell him something, pitch him on something. And Ed said to Joe, he goes, "What are you doing this week?" And he goes, "I'm going to the Bulldogs game." Now that's our local high school football team. And Joe's going to go there and sit in the stands with 5,000 people, and he's going to look down. He's going to see somebody nine people away from him, and he's going to say something to the tune of like, "Hi, Sally, how are you doing? How's your kid doing in softball?" And she's going to say, "It's really fantastic, Joe. Thanks for asking." And he knows that. And that's what Open Door and OfferPad and like the big conglomerates can't do. They can't do what we have by sheer numbers.
Yeah.
And if we really understand our role, if Joe were to understand, like when he says that to that person down there, that there's more at play to the whole thing than him just having that conversation. It is the one area where we absolutely succeed over like these fintech companies.
Yeah.
A couple of years ago, and if you give me a little leeway here, a couple of years ago, there was a study about the resurgence of travel agencies. So what we learned is if I'm going to go to St. Louis, I'm probably going to go on Travelocity and spend $99 and I'm going to suffer the consequences of a shitty seat on whatever. But if I'm going to go to Europe for a few weeks, I want to make sure that that big tab experience is going to be put in the hands of somebody who they really care about. Well, there's no bigger big tab experience than buying a house right now. And for my money, I want that Joe Rapisarda who knows what my kid does. I want to know that Joe Rapisarda knows that my kid's in softball right now, and that does matter to me.
Yeah.
Now, I'll tell you this personally, Jeff. I put a 30-year roof on my house when I could have put a 40-year roof on my house. The reason I did that is because I had a better experience with the person who said they were going to put the 31 on. I still, to this day, think that was my best option on the table. So lenders have to understand and realtors have to understand like what our role is and who we mean to our community. And if we can start to do that, our compensation will never come up in any type of conversation. These asshole lawyers are charging 30%, bitching about realtors who they say are making 6%, and we know that to be a lie.
Yeah.
You know, so like what realtors and lenders have to do is we have to understand what our true value proposition is. And what we do when we are at our best is we become those great communicators in our community. I have no doubt, like in your community where you're at right now, that you're having conversations with people in a multitude of areas. You're helping commerce work in or outside of those commissions that you earn. This is what a realtor and this is what a lender needs to do right now, and understand that. And by the way, you'll be compensated wildly for your efforts, but you have to be disciplined in doing it.
Yeah. Well, and you just you just set the ball on the tee for what I preach anyway, because what you said that agent is doing and what effectively that was almost like a metaphor for what how we are going to beat big industry, how we're going to beat AI, how we're going to beat tech, because they'll never be that. They'll never be human. And at scale, you can only go to so many football games and have so many conversations with other human beings. However, when you incorporate social media and the opportunity that you have to have those exact same personal conversations with people, hit them with that dopamine, man, like I can't like thank you for setting that ball on the tee for me, because that gives me just a place to tease that. And anybody who's heard me talk about it, like that is where the rubber meets the road. That is the opportunity that every loan officer, every real estate agent, every business that exists is missing they're missing the opportunity of doing what you just described at scale. And the reason why they don't do it, Brian, is because they can't understand the ROI. Even though there's no ROI from going to the football game and having that conversation. But you do that. Why? Because it's what we've always done. But now we're doing it in a different medium through a different vehicle. And so we look at it and say, well, why am I going to spend my time doing that? What's my ROI? It's a long game, man. It's a long game. But having those conversations is the most valuable thing to your sustainability, period.
Here's my whole thing. If you can't make clients, make friends.
Yep.
Like just like if actually, as a realtor or lender, try to make friends. Quit trying to make clients. Like we have like this, like really kind of short-term vision in terms of what we do. Just make friends. If you can't make clients, make friends. Yep. And what that means is you're when you choose to do that, then you choose to be the best version of you. I mean, like Jeff, like I don't know you too well. You don't know me too well, but like I could tell you this. like with all the people, if you choose to engage them in a way that is going to benefit them, at or without your cost, but you always put that first,
Yeah.
your business is going to be great.
Yeah.
Like, it's just going to, because that's the business that comes back to us. Like, that's what we have to do. We make friends. I talk about getting realtors like getting baseball cards. Like, yeah, you know, I want Pete Rose. I don't want that backup catcher. But at the same time, like, I also understand, like, I can allow like the strategic technical part of my mind to get in the way of what I ultimately should be doing, which is having an idealistic approach to my business.
Yeah.
Now, think about this. If you deal with like the Open Doors of the world, or you deal with the Zillows of the world, they have a moral and legal obligation. Their moral and legal obligation is to their shareholders. Well, then, all right. So who's going to suffer the consequence of that action? Well, it's going to be the people who own homes. So I, as a lender or a realtor, I have a legal and moral obligation to make sure that that person gets the best deal in their house. But those who are going to fill the vacuum, the void that is created if we do get rid of real estate agents, is going to be the opposite. They're going to have a legal and moral obligation to screw those people as much as humanly possible.
Yeah.
I mean, just wrap your mind around that for 2 seconds. It's fucked up.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah.
So what do we need to do? I guess the answer is pretty simple. It's like, be better. In my scenario that I gave you, Joe Rapisar, to go into the Bulldogs game, we have to understand why we're at those games. We have to understand what we're doing. And we have to collectively, as an industry, be a little bit better about it. And if we do, we can't lose. If we choose not to do that, we'll never win.
Yeah. Let me ask you something.
Sure.
Just to stay along that vein, do you think Joe, when he goes to that football game and he sees that person, people over, naturally what he did is the right thing to do? But why do you think, or do you think he ever sees that person sitting next to him or 9 people over and says, hey, you know, you know who I am, right? I sell real estate. And let me tell you about my latest listing. Let me tell you about my latest open house. Let me give you a market update while they're sitting at the football game. And anybody listening to this right now is like, that's absurd. Why would anyone do that? That's stupid.
Well, if the conversation goes down that road,
No. Like, without the conversation ever even starting, he leads off with that. You wouldn't do that.
I personally probably wouldn't do that because I'm there for a football game or a baseball game. But I also understand the short game, the long game. Like, what I'm going to do is I'm going to like send a follow-up text, say, hey, it was great seeing you over there. Hey, can we have a conversation about this? Oh, by the way, I thought about a couple of things. I'm going to have that conversation on my terms. I'm going to be much more tactical about like my approach to it. But I'll give you a real life scenario. So my daughter was dating a kid. My daughter and all of her friends, they were travel volleyball. And they like, when they were on the varsity team their freshman year, they killed it. They lost 2 games over 4 years. They crushed. Like, if it was a football team, it would have been the front page of the papers. But these girls, like, they're incredible what they did. However, in the process of doing this, like all the baseball players, like all the volleyball girls, do the math on that one. Pretty simple to see why. All these girls were raised in my house. All these boys were outside of the front of my house for, you know, the 4 years when they were in high school. And then when my daughter moved down to San Diego, all the boys moved down to San Diego. Now, I got to know like everybody in the process. I got to know all the baseball people. I used to go to the baseball games to see my daughter's boyfriend, who's at the University of Washington right now, who's probably just got drafted a couple of days ago. But I used to go to these games not because it meant anything to my business, but I did it because I enjoyed the kids. I thought like they're just, all of them were fantastic. All the boys and all the girls were great. And when I would go to these games, I would see people, you know, from Solano County. And what I realized, Jeff, is like there's this like interwoven nature of like, I'll see you at a coffee shop, I'll see you at the pickleball court, I'll see you at the baseball game. But the more that I find myself putting myself out there, I just see this convergence, this really interesting convergence of people. And when somebody converges my life in 2 to 3 areas, I make it a point to say, okay, we have enough in common to where we should be having a conversation about like how I can increase your real estate holdings, because that's my skill set.
Yep.
And for the most part, like these people that I'm dealing with, boy, I'll tell you right now, 1/3 of my business comes from that.
Yep.
It's just being aware of the world around me. Yep. I'm doing exactly what I want to do, what I choose to do.
Yep.
But in the process of doing what I want and choose to do, there's opportunities that are simply missed. You do it, I do the same thing.
You earn the right with those people, and
yeah.
the premise
That's
of
a
why
great way of saying it.
the thing that the reason why I said what I said is that when you talk about doing it now at scale and you do it on social media, and the mistake that we all make, and the other reason that you brought up, one reason, it's a bunch of part-time people in this industry that have given the industry a bad name. The other
Yeah.
reason why we're in the boat that we're in is because we have been one of the poorest marketing industries on the planet, because
Right.
we took to the football game and we walked through the stands, so to speak, and marketed ourselves in a place that wasn't designed for marketing. You went to the football game and you walked up and down the bleachers and introduced yourself and said, "Let me give you a Monday market update." And everybody was like, "Get the F out of here." And that's exactly what happened on social media. People showed up to social for social connection, for entertainment, for all of these reasons that weren't to be spammed to. And that's what we did. And you brought it up perfectly. Go to the game, ask the person how their kid's doing. Done. You planted a seed. It's the same concept on social. And I don't want to get down this path because we've taken this where we weren't supposed to go, but I think it's good. It's a good
This is a
conversation
really
because
great conversation.
yeah, yeah, and it needs to continue. I think you and I need to continue this. We're coming up on the hour.
Like
Let me ask.
the fabric of our life and our job need to seamlessly work together on the same canvas.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that's what it really, like when you find realtors or lenders who are great at what they do, like they never don't work, they never stop working. It just becomes who they are. And those are the people who really get it. And again, I want to stress this. When we do this on a micro level, like nobody can come to Vacaville and go to a Bulldogs game like fucking Joe Rapisarda. Nobody can do that. Like Zillow can't do that. They can put like ads in the background, but they'll never have that conversation with Sally, who's nine seats down from.
And that will mean more to Sally than any
And that's
other
how we
form of
win.
marketing. Yeah.
That's how we win.
That's it.
If we do this better, then we never lose. If we don't do this, we never win.
Correct. And that is the one way that you will always be able to fend off big tech.
Yep.
I love it, dude. This is great, man. Let's schedule the next one. Let's keep the conversation going. And thank you for taking the time to join us today and share with our audience. And we'll be in touch, brother.
It's my pleasure.